Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're tackling, I think, something we've all wondered about. What gives some people and companies as undeniable it factor? That magnetic pull that makes you want to follow them. Buy from them or just be a part of their world.
Right.
We've got excerpts from Simon Sinek's Start with Why to help us figure this out. It's all about the motivations behind great leadership and lasting success.
You're absolutely right. It's more than just charisma or a slick marketing campaign. Start with why. Dives into this by saying people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It's that deeper connection, that feeling that this brand or person gets me, gets my values, gets why I do what I do.
That resonates with me for sure. I'm totally drawn to companies that are purpose-driven, even if their products aren't radically different. But this start with why idea, it gets even deeper, right? It dives into the science of decision-making, this golden circle concept, and even something called the celery test. Color me intrigued.
Intriguing is putting it mildly. Sinek kicks things off with a story about the Wright brothers and Samuel Pierpont Langley.
Okay.
Both were obsessed with building a flying machine. But Langley was all about fame and fortune. The what? The Wright brothers, on the other hand, were driven by this deep belief in the impact of flight, their WHY.
Right.
And get this, even though the Wright brothers had way fewer resources, they were the ones who ultimately made history.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Langley essentially gave up just days after the Wright brothers' first successful flight.
Yeah.
Talk about missing out on your own dream. It makes you wonder, could he have achieved the same thing if his motivations were different?
It really underscores the power of WHY. Sinek argues that this applies to companies too, not just individuals. He uses Apple as a prime example, saying their crazy success boils down to one clear WHY, to challenge the status quo and empower individuals. And you see this WHY woven into everything they do, from their minimalist product design to their iconic marketing campaigns.
I'm starting to see how this works, but how does that WHY actually translate into, say, a product launch or marketing campaign? How does that philosophy turn into something tangible?
Think about the iPod. It wasn't the first MP3 player, but Apple blew everyone out of the water because they focused on WHY. People craved it. 1,000 songs in your pocket?
Right.
That tapped into a feeling, a desire for freedom and possibility. It wasn't just about the technical specs, the what. They even changed their name from Apple Computer Inc. to Apple Inc. to show this broader mission, this idea that they weren't just about building machines anymore.
That's a brilliant example. It makes you think, what's the WHY behind some of the other tech giants, and why haven't they been as successful branching out?
Sinek tackles that head on.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. He points to companies like Dell, who tried to break into the PDA and MP3 player market, but they totally flopped.
Oh.
Their WHY was making computers. No matter how hard they tried, consumers couldn't see them as anything else.
It makes sense now that you say it. It just wouldn't feel right to buy an MP3 player from a computer company. It's like there's a disconnect between their identity and the product. So what does all of this mean for the rest of us? Does start with why only work if you're selling some revolutionary gadget or have millions in funding?
Not at all. Sinek says that WHY is actually deeply rooted in our biology, specifically in the limbic system. This is the part of the brain that handles our feelings and decision-making. And here's the kicker. This part of the brain doesn't deal with language.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that we make decisions based on gut feelings, not logic? That's a game changer.
It is. It explains why we have those gut decisions that feel so right but are hard to put into words. Think about buying a TV. Sometimes you just vibe with a certain model, even if you can't explain all the technical reasons why. It just feels right. Or think about taking a multiple choice test. Often that first instinct is the correct one.
This is where it gets really interesting, right? So if our decisions are often emotion-driven, how does that connect back to this whole WHY concept?
Because a company that clearly communicates their WHY, their purpose, their belief system, it taps into those emotions. It creates a feeling of trust and belonging, like you're part of something bigger. Think about brands like Harley-Davidson. People tattoo their logo on themselves.
Wow.
It's not just about the motorcycle. It's about being part of a community, a tribe that shares your values. It's a powerful feeling, that sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself. It's like finding your tribe, the people who get you and what you stand for.
It's like finding your people, right? It's such a powerful feeling to connect with a brand or a company that really aligns with your own values. It makes you feel like you're part of something special. But hold on, how do you actually find your WHY, both personally and professionally? It seems like a daunting task.
Sinek talks about the importance of looking inward, which can definitely be a challenge. What are those core values that drive your decisions? What makes you feel truly fulfilled? It might not come to you overnight, but it's worth the effort to uncover those driving forces behind your passions and motivations.
It's about figuring out what makes you tick, what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's about understanding your unique contribution to the world, right? But even if you have a rock-solid WHY, how do you get other people to buy in, to become part of your movement? Sinek mentions this law of diffusion of innovations. What's the deal with that?
It's a fascinating concept that explains how ideas spread and gain traction. Essentially, it says that to reach a tipping point, you need to connect with those early adopters, the folks who are naturally drawn to new ideas and who have the power to influence others. They're the ones who champion your cause and help spread the message to the masses.
So it's not just about shouting your WHY from the rooftops. It's about finding the right people to amplify your message, the ones who will resonate with your WHY and become your advocates.
Exactly. He uses the example of TiVo. Remember those early DVRs? They were a great product, but they ultimately failed because they focused on the features, the what, instead of connecting with those early adopters on a deeper level. They didn't communicate. WHY TiVo mattered, why it could change the way people watch TV.
That's a perfect example of how a brilliant product can fall flat if it doesn't connect with the right people. It's not just about reaching the masses, it's about reaching the right people, the ones who will become your evangelists. But what about companies that are already successful? Can they still benefit from Start With Why, or is it too late for them to redefine their purpose?
Sinek argues that even successful companies can lose their WHY as they grow. He calls this phenomenon the split. As companies get bigger, they often become more focused on maintaining the status quo on what they do and how they do it, and they lose sight of the original passion, the WHY that drove their success in the first place.
It's like they become more about keeping the machine running smoothly than about the original spark that ignited the whole thing.
You got it. And that shift can be dangerous. It can lead to a decline in passion, innovation, and even customer loyalty. He uses Walmart as a cautionary tale. After Sam Walton passed away, the company, despite its massive size and success, started to drift away from its WHY. Employee morale dipped, customer satisfaction went down, and they faced a wave of criticism and lawsuits. What's even more telling is that a group of successful entrepreneurs confessed to feeling less successful as their companies grew and their WHY became diluted. It's a sobering thought.
That's a wake-up call for sure. It sounds like maintaining that clarity of WHY is an ongoing battle, especially as a company grows and evolves. So how do you fight that drift? How do you keep that WHY burning bright?
That's where leadership comes into play. Sinek highlights that truly great leaders personify the WHY. They're not just figureheads. They embody the company's purpose in everything they do. They're constantly reminding everyone, employees, customers, even themselves, about the bigger picture, the reason behind all the hard work and effort.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk, leading by example and inspiring others to follow suit.
Precisely. They set the tone. They make decisions based on the WHY, and they rally everyone around that shared purpose.
So it's not just about having a charismatic personality, it's about embodying the WHY in your actions and the way you lead and the decisions you make.
Absolutely. And to illustrate this, Sinek compares the leadership styles and legacies of Steve Jobs at Apple and Bill Gates at Microsoft. Both visionary leaders, but their integration into the company culture, their way of embodying and transmitting the WHY had a huge impact on their respective companies.
Now that you mention it, when Steve Jobs left Apple in 1985, the company seemed to lose its mojo. It wasn't until his return in 1997 that they regained that innovative spirit and became the powerhouse we know today.
Exactly. And on the flip side, even though Microsoft went through its own split, they managed to hold on to their WHY to some extent because Bill Gates remained a visible and active leader. He was a constant reminder of why Microsoft existed, of its original mission and values.
It's like he was a living embodiment of their WHY, constantly reinforcing their purpose and keeping them on track. But what about companies that don't have a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates leading the charge? How can they keep their WHY alive, especially as they grow and face new challenges?
That's where things get really interesting. Sinek emphasizes the importance of creating a culture that breathes and lives the WHY even when the founder or the original leader is gone. He points to Southwest Airlines as a shining example of a company that has mastered this.
Let's dive into Southwest. They're legendary for their company culture and customer loyalty. It's like they've cracked the code on creating a happy and productive work environment. What's their secret sauce?
Their founder, Herb Kelleher, was a true believer in putting employees first. He famously said, employees come first, and if employees are treated right, they treat the outside world right. The outside world uses the company's product again, and that makes the shareholders happy. He understood that happy employees lead to happy customers, which ultimately leads to a successful business.
It's like a beautiful ripple effect. Taking care of your employees creates a positive energy that spreads outward to your customers and beyond.
Exactly.
Mm.
And Kelleher wasn't just spouting feel-good slogans. He lived and breathed this philosophy. He was known for his down-to-earth personality, his willingness to roll up his sleeves and work alongside his employees, and his genuine care for their well-being. He created a culture of trust and loyalty that became deeply embedded in the company's DNA.
It's like he created a family, not just a company. And that feeling of belonging, of shared purpose, is incredibly powerful.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And even after Kelleher stepped down, Southwest has managed to maintain that remarkable culture. They're incredibly intentional about hiring people who fit their values. They empower their employees, make decisions, and they constantly reinforce the WHY in everything they do. It's not just a poster on the wall. It's woven into the fabric of their organization.
It sounds like they've found the sweet spot, a company that's both profitable and purpose-driven, a place where people feel valued and inspired to do their best work. But start with why isn't all sunshine and roses, right? Sinek also gets into the nitty-gritty of building a business around your WHY, the practical steps, and the potential pitfalls.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that you need clarity, discipline, and consistency to make this work. You need to be able to articulate your WHY in a way that's both simple and powerful. You need the discipline to make decisions that align with your WHY, even when they're tough or go against the grain. And you need to be relentless in communicating your WHY in everything you do, your products, your marketing, your interactions with customers and employees.
So it's not enough to just have a warm, fuzzy feeling about your WHY. You need to translate that into action to a system that guides your choices and shapes your behavior.
Precisely. And that takes effort and intention. It's about building systems that keep your WHY front and center, even as your company grows and evolves. One of the tools Sinek introduces to illustrate this is the celery test.
Okay, the celery test. This sounds intriguing. Lay it on me.
Imagine you're at the grocery store with a friend who really knows your eating habits and health goals. This friend recommends you buy rice milk and celery, saying, "Hey, based on your WHY, I think these would be great additions to your diet." Would you trust their recommendation, even if they didn't give you a detailed explanation?
I probably would, yeah. If I trust them and they understand my goals, I'd be inclined to take their advice. It's like they've already done the thinking for me, aligning their suggestions with what they know about my WHY.
Exactly. That's the celery test in action. When your WHY is crystal clear, making decisions becomes much simpler. You don't need to overanalyze every little thing or get distracted by all the shiny objects out there.
It's like having a built-in filter that helps you make choices that are aligned with your purpose, both personally and professionally.
You got it. And that can be incredibly freeing and empowering. It allows you to focus on what truly matters and to build a business or a life that reflects your deepest values.
We've covered a lot of ground already: the power of WHY, how to avoid losing it, the importance of leadership and culture, and even the celery test concept. It's clear that Start With Why isn't just a business book. It's a framework for living a more purposeful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've just scratched the surface. There's still so much to unpack, like how to build a megaphone that effectively communicates your WHY and how to overcome those common obstacles that can derail even the most well-intentioned efforts to build a purpose-driven organization.
It sounds like we're just getting warmed up.
We are. So buckle up. We'll dive into all that and more in the final part of our deep dive into Start With Why.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Start With Why. In parts 1 and 2, we uncovered the power of WHY, how to build a megaphone for it, and the dangers of losing sight of it as your company grows. But I have a feeling things are about to get even more practical.
You read my mind. In this final part, we're going beyond the theory and getting into the nitty-gritty of applying these principles to real-world challenges. We'll explore how you can use these insights to navigate tough decisions and overcome some of the obstacles that inevitably pop up when you're trying to build a purpose-driven organization.
I'm all ears. One thing that's really stuck with me is how our gut feelings often guide our choices, even if we can't fully explain why. There's this deeper wisdom at play, but how do we actually tap into that in a practical way, especially in the business world where logic and data often reign supreme?
That's where Sinek's celery test comes in. Remember that analogy we talked about? It's all about simplifying your decision-making by filtering your choices through the lens of your WHY. When your purpose is clear, it's like having this internal compass that points you in the right direction, even when faced with complex situations or tempting distractions.
It's like having a trusted advisor whispering in your ear. Does this decision align with your WHY? Does it move you closer to your goals? And speaking of gut feelings, Sinek uses a great example of a company that seemed to ignore its own intuition. Volkswagen's attempt to launch a luxury car, the Phaeton, back in the early 2000s.
Ah, the Phaeton. A
It-
beautiful car, no doubt, but it just felt off-brand for Volkswagen. Their WHY had always been about being the people's car, affordable, reliable, accessible to everyone. But a luxury car with a luxury price tag just didn't resonate with that core identity. It failed the celery test and ultimately it flopped.
It's a cautionary tale for sure. It shows how straying from your WHY can lead to some costly missteps. But start with why isn't just about avoiding pitfalls. Sinek also showcases some truly inspiring companies that have built their entire ethos around their WHY. We've talked about Southwest Airlines, but another standout example is Costco, the membership-only warehouse club that seems to defy all the traditional rules of retail.
Costco is a fascinating case study. Their WHY is to provide their members with the highest quality products at the absolute lowest prices. And they're incredibly disciplined about sticking to that mission. They keep their markups incredibly low. They treat their employees like gold. And they focus on building genuine long-term relationships with their members. It's a recipe for success that's hard to argue with.
It's almost counterintuitive, right? They seem to be leaving money on the table by keeping their prices so low, but it's clearly working for them. Their customer satisfaction is through the roof. Their management base is incredibly loyal, and their employees are highly engaged and motivated.
Exactly. Costco understands that their WHY is about more than just maximizing profits in the short term. It's about creating real value for their members and building a community around that shared value. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
It's a perfect example of how a strong WHY can create this virtuous cycle of success. But let's be real, not every company is going to be a Southwest or a Costco. There are going to be bumps in the road challenges that test your commitment to your WHY. What are some of the most common hurdles that companies face when trying to build a purpose-driven organization?
One of the biggest obstacles is resistance to change. People are naturally creatures of habit, and shifting mindsets and behaviors can be tough, even when there's a compelling WHY driving the change.
It's like trying to steer a giant ship in a new direction. It takes time, effort, and a whole lot of patience. So how do you navigate that resistance and get everyone on board with the new vision?
Sinek stresses the importance of clear, consistent, and compelling communication. It's about explaining the WHY behind the change, painting a vivid picture of the benefits, and addressing people's concerns with empathy and understanding.
It's not about dictating change from the top down, but bringing people along on the journey, making them feel like they're part of the solution.
Exactly. It's about creating a shared understanding and building buy-in. And remember, change takes time. There will be setbacks and moments of doubt, but if you stay focused on your WHY and keep communicating it effectively, you'll create momentum.
Another challenge I can see is measuring the impact of WHY. It's not always easy to quantify things like employee morale, customer loyalty, or brand reputation. How do you measure something that's often felt rather than seen?
That's a great point, and Sinek acknowledges that measuring the impact of WHY can be tricky.
Mm.
He encourages companies to get creative and find ways to measure what truly matters, even if it doesn't always fit neatly into traditional financial metrics. This might involve conducting employee surveys, tracking customer retention rates, or simply observing how people interact with your brand and share their experiences.
It's about finding the right metrics that align with your WHY and recognizing that some of the most valuable outcomes might not show up immediately on a spreadsheet.
You got it. It's about taking a holistic view and understanding that building a purpose-driven organization is a long game. It's about creating something sustainable and fulfilling, not just chasing short-term profits.
It's about playing the long game, right? Building a business that has a positive impact on the world and stands the test of time.
Precisely. And Sinek argues that when you genuinely focus on the WHY, the profits will follow, even if it's not always a straight line to get there. There will be challenges and setbacks, but it's that unwavering commitment to your purpose that will see you through.
So resilience is key, being able to weather those storms and stay true to your WHY even when things get tough.
Absolutely. And Sinek shares some incredible stories of companies that faced immense adversity but emerged even stronger because they never wavered from their WHY. It's a powerful reminder that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Start With Why, what's the one big takeaway you want listeners to carry with them? What's the essence of this powerful idea?
If there's one thing I hope you'll remember, it's this. WHY matters. It matters in business. It matters in our personal lives. It matters in every aspect of our existence. When we start with WHY, we unlock a powerful force that fuels our motivation, inspires our actions, and gives our lives deeper meaning.
It's about finding that spark within us, that purpose that drives us, and letting it guide our choices and shape the world around us.
Exactly. It's about building a world where businesses are driven by something more than just profits, where people are empowered to pursue their passions, and where we all feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
What a beautiful vision. I have a feeling Simon Sinek would be proud. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into Start with Why.
It's been my pleasure.
And remember, if you're ever feeling lost or uninspired, take a moment to reflect on your own WHY. What are those core values that drive you? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world? Once you connect with your WHY, everything else becomes a little bit easier, a little bit clearer, and a whole lot more fulfilling. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep starting with WHY.